So I call this meeting to order and would like to recognise that we're on the unceded territories of the Lillooet Nation, the Squamish Nation, I believe the Staplium, but recognise all of our neighbouring First Nations. Have approval of the agenda, please. Moved by. I think last time we agreed we'd use first names in this committee. So if that's okay with you, that's what I would do. So moved by Jen, seconded by John. All in favour? Opposed? Motion carries. Consent agenda. We have a motion for the consent agenda. Moved by Vivian, seconded by Jen. Questions or comments? Any opposed? Motion carries. Do we have any business arising from the minutes? None.
Can I just interrupt, Tony, just to ask?
You
I know you put forward a proposal for regular meetings for the committee and it didn't work for me. I certainly replied to that request, but are we going to talk about the next meeting here somewhere on this agenda?
Yeah, 5.2, I believe, addresses that. Does not committee meeting schedule with that?
Okie doke.
We okay on that? Good. Okay, so number 5.1, Chair's verbal report. Code of Conduct Policy Review. Director Jen's going to speak to us on this. I don't have anything to say right now. No? I don't have anything other than that.
No, she's on mute.
Oh.
Sorry, I'm struggling to open. Can you skip ahead to the next thing and come back to this?
Okay. So the next one is 5.2 CEO verbal report. Committee meeting schedule. So Heather?
Hi, everyone. So Natalie Klein has sent out a few doodle polls and has struggled to find a date and time that can be reoccurring that works with everyone on the committee. A couple proposals, she apologizes she can't be here today. A couple things she has proposed is to schedule them in 3-month increments and get a time that works for everyone, or collectively, she did feel that the first Wednesday of every month would be manageable, or the same day as an EAD and just at the end of it, depending on how long the EAD. She did some research and noticed that the EAD committee meetings rarely go past 3, so it is another option. I prefer having a reoccurring one and then canceling them if there's nothing on the available on the agenda. And just an update that a new poll will be going out, and hopefully we can find something that works really well with everyone.
Yeah, any question, Heather, is it compulsory that we have one person here in the room?
That's it for Angela.
Thank you. Through the chair, just the corporate officer has to be in the room in order to support any public attendance, but all other members can join remotely.
Okay, because I think that might affect when we have the meeting. Vivian, you had a comment about this, about meeting schedule?
Well, just I appreciate sort of the efficiency of scheduling it on the same day as the EAD, but for me, that would mean that I'm always attending by Zoom, and that means about 5 hours on Zoom on that day versus having the time to travel down and be in person for the EAD, which I much prefer. So I'm looking forward. The first Wednesday of the month will probably generally work for me. I don't know how others are, so I'll look forward to that doodle poll, but I wouldn't want to lose the in-person participation at the EAD just because we make the meeting so long that travel time then makes it a bit too much of a day for those of us that travel. It's not unreasonable, but it's my preference.
You and I are the only ones on the EAD committee and this committee. So I'm fine with, I initially suggested EAD because it suited me, you know, I'm here anyway.
Right.
And it worked, but I understand what you're saying, so quite happy to look at another day. How about anybody else? Any preferences?
John has-
Oh, I'm sorry, John, your hand, I see it.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. Just want to note that I have not received any doodle polling. So whatever communication is set up for that, it seems I'm not on that list. So it'd be great if I could be added. Thanks.
Thanks, Director French. Yes, and the doodle poll did go out prior to your alternative.
That would explain it.
Okay, so we're happy just to wait for the doodle poll?
Chris has his hand up.
Chris, where is it? Where?
Yeah, just gonna note, thank you
Oh,
quickly.
sorry.
I'm changing jobs. I don't know exactly what my schedule is going to be, so I sort of do the best I can, but I may have to change my mind once I tell you.
Noted, thank you.
I have a
guess-
question. Tony, if I may.
Yes, sure, go ahead.
Is it required? Actually, never mind. I'll save that question for another time.
Okay. So if I don't have to be here, I erroneously thought that we had to have somebody in the room. But if we don't have to, it doesn't matter to me when it is really. If I'm coming in by Zoom, it could be pretty well any day. So I'll wait for the poll, and if we could, when we get it from Natalie, if we could all fire it back in right away, that would be very helpful. And then we'll
Thank you.
we'll pick some time. But Heather suggested a meeting every 3 months, having it locked in, unless, isn't that what you said?
Yeah, it's not the preferred way. It's more, let's just puzzle piece and hodgepodge every 3 months, the next 3 meetings, and we would prefer a reoccurring schedule. And then just cancel if there's no. So I think finding a reoccurring schedule that's consistent would be best. And that's what Natalie's going to work on now. But she apologizes. It was a struggle finding the algorithm that would work for everyone.
Yeah, well, okay. I like the idea of having, when we sort of set all our meetings up at the beginning of the year, for example, these meetings will be set. And yeah, you're right. If there's no real need for one, then we can cancel it. It's easier to do it that way than to be scratching around every month trying to find a new date. So,
Agree.
good. Any other comments, or shall we move along? We're going to move along. Jen, are we ready to come back to you now?
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you. Yeah, sorry, I just I asked that this be added to the agenda for while we're required to have a code of conduct, consider why we would not have a code of conduct by, I think it was, doesn't matter, 6 months post-election date of 2022. We've done that, we've checked that box. But in looking through the code of conduct, I think there are some updates that are maybe warranted. And so I just asked that we put this on our agenda so that we could consider a review of the code of conduct. We've recently gone through a pretty lengthy review through the RMOW, and it has a lot of good information. I don't see this as a start from scratch process. I think this is a look at it, compare notes, and update things that make sense with the extensive work that the RMOW put in. I know that there's also work that has been done in Squamish, and I don't know the status of the Village of Pemberton's code of conduct, so I can't speak to that. But just as a good practice, I think it would be worthwhile to have a review of the code of conduct. to consider, because it's easier to have a good one and never use it than to have a weak one and need it when rarely do you want to use one of these, but when you're in that position, it's easier to have a solid one. And again, I don't want to spend a lot of money and time on start from scratch. But I just wanted to put that there for the consideration of this committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Thomas. Oh, Chris.
Yeah, just to Jen's point, this is one I know we've got a lot of policy we'd like to work through, but we do have a fairly functional and collaborative board, and so getting this done before the next election, there might be a real value in that.
So are we agreeing, Tony, it's Vivian, can we, are we agreeing to put that on the next agenda as an item then? Since we already have the materials ready in the background to work with?
Hang on, let me just go to Angela and then Heather. Angela?
Thank you, through the chair. On February 22nd, 2023, the board did pass a resolution that consideration for a more detailed review of board code of conduct policy number 1.16 be referred to this committee for its input and recommendation as part of the Governance Excellence Initiative project. And it is on that work plan right now. And we can certainly reprioritize that work plan based on what we're hearing from the committee. As we already have a resolution and it is on that work plan, I don't believe we need another recommendation to the board.
Okay, so it's really up to us to decide how we want to proceed. Heather.
Hi, I just want to clarify what I'm hearing, which is two things. One, when considering the work plan, we should consider the timeline, knowing we have a very collaborative and effective board right now. To get this done within this current board term would be very good. And to not reinvent the wheel and invest a lot of money and look at what Whistler and Squamish has invested in, as I understand from Chair Ford and others, that it is robust code of conduct. And so we don't have to invest a lot of money. We can review what's there and see what works for us, is what I'm hearing, which shortening our timeline for delivering it, but giving us a really good tool to do that in an effective and quick way. Thank you.
So we don't need a new resolution because we already have one, and this committee is sort of empowered to proceed in any way we see fit right now. So how would you like to proceed? Would you like to?
I don't think, I think that this conversation helps reprioritize the work plan for that work, and also helps us have some guardrails up on the amount of effort and money that's invested in it, knowing that a lot of our neighboring municipalities have done similar investments and have really expanded their work plan or their code of conduct. So thank you. I don't think a resolution is needed, but it's good direction.
So what we're looking forward to then is that staff will bring something perhaps to say to our next meeting of this committee, with some materials from Squamish, from Whistler, so that we can, with some recommendations about how we can adjust our policy.
May I ask that we pause for 2 meetings, because we have very lengthy vacations happening over the month of August, and I wouldn't want to put stress onto the team. But we'll try to bring something forward for you, even if you want to review the other 2 code of conducts.
Yeah, Jen.
Yeah, I might recommend that each of the committee members, we can send around the links to the other 2 and to ours, and then read them through, maybe print them off, mark them up with a pencil of what you like, what you don't like. And then we could probably come to the next meeting ready to make recommendations of changes that we like without a lengthy staff input, because not that staff can't do the work. I don't think we need that. I feel like this is the work of the committee, and this is sort of the direction that I heard when we made this resolution back last year. Was, you know, this is roll up your sleeves time for this committee. So and then, you know, obviously that would then send staff away to make those changes and bring it back to a following meeting to recommend to the board for those. So again, don't want to create a ton of work for staff. This work's already been done.
I love that idea. Sorry.
So what we're looking for then is for each member of the committee to have copies of the policies from Squamish and Whistler, plus a copy of our own existing policy, and that we will then work on it individually, come back to our next meeting, prepared to debate, discuss, recommend, so on.
Yeah.
So I would prefer to have print copies, so that because I can fiddle around and do things on print copies. Is that something we can? Okay, so perhaps a request to staff then that this committee be provided with copies of those 3 policies as soon as practical, and that we as a committee will commit to being prepared at our next meeting to further this discussion.
Great.
All agreed?
Yep.
Does that need to be in a resolution or it probably should, shouldn't it?
Nah.
Doesn't?
It's up to the committee.
Well, as long as staff are happy with that, I'm okay with it. Everybody okay?
It's less than an hour's work.
What's that?
I
Less
feel
than
it
an
doesn't
hour's
need-
work? Good. Okay. So we'll leave that then. 5.3. Electoral Area Directors Committee Terms of Reference. Oh, I lost it now. Where's it gone? There we
Thanks.
go. So Heather, are you going to talk to us on this?
I can, thank you. So in reviewing just a little bit of background during the Governance Excellence Project that was underway, I think probably 2 years ago to last year, there was a survey to all the board members, and effectiveness and governance of the organization scored very high by the board directors. One of the things that was pointed out was some clarifications around the Electoral Area Directors Committee, and specifically the roles of the Electoral Area Directors, and a review of delegated authorities in order to make more effective delegated authorities to the elected area directors, electoral area directors, and other options on the table. One of the things that to start off that conversation is to have an adopted terms of reference for the EAD committee. At this point, there isn't one, so that's the first step. You'll note that this one is slim and effective. There's 2 reasons why that is. Referencing point by point other bylaws means that anytime one is changed, you have to go in and change every other document that references, which is now for the most part moving forward, most of them will say, see this bylaw, and not quote the points and each individual verbiage. So that's one of the reasons. The other reason is that my recommendation would be that we'll take questions in a moment on the document itself, would be for this committee to support it as presented, or with any changes you might want to see, and ask that the Electoral Area Directors Committee themselves review it for their input, which will begin some strong conversations and really effective opportunities to figure out where the electoral area directors feel their strengths are, where they would like to see changes and have that conversation. We will bring in Tracy, the consultant who helped create the first phase of the Governance Excellence Project, to support that conversation at the EAD committee. So this is a great opportunity to have that discussion in the scope of reviewing the EAD terms of reference, and where holes the EAD committee feels there needs to be more direction, more meat, less meat, etc. So as presented, you'll find it simplified, and that is purposeful. And it's actually in line with many other regional districts. We were able to receive a lot of the terms of reference for other regional districts, and most of them are quite streamlined.
So we have a sort of a two-part process here. Then what we're talking about here is the terms of reference. One of which is given authority. The committee may exercise direct authority on matters delegated to it by the board. So if the terms of reference are accepted, then the next part of the conversation is looking at, well, what should be delegated, and because I know there's already been some discussion about that. So that we wouldn't be talking about the extent of delegated powers while we're looking at the terms of reference. Mike, am I correct on that?
Through the chair, I feel that bringing in the consultant at the time of looking at the EAD TOR will be a good opportunity to have those conversations and start them, or understand if there are confines within provincial policy and how regional district is managed. That great idea, actually legally can't do that, but it's really good opportunity to bring this in, have the consultant be there with the EAD committee, and really progress forward in looking at the format and whatever the EAD's committee is feeling they would like answered, changed, or strengthened, and bring those recommendations. Those could be formed into recommendations to, again, to the policy committee or to the board, depending on what's being talked about. But this is a good conversation starter, which hasn't had a place to be at the EAD committee meetings to date. But the TOR will be a good conversation starter for that.
Okay. I'm looking to see if I can see any hands. Comments, Vivian. You're muted.
There we go. If we're talking, are we, Chair or Tony, are you wanting comments on this policy as it's presented here now?
Yes, please. Yeah.
I overall like it. I have a couple questions. I have one sort of fairly strong objection to that first 1.1, and it's called the establishment. Is that the same thing as in 2.1 where it refers to its mandate? That's the first question. Is that the same thing? Because I've got a problem with that 1.1 in the sense that it's very limited. It restricts us down to pertaining to services paid for by one or more of the following ABCD. And what I'd like is a broader mandate, sort of the EAD committee, standing committee established to consider matters related to any or all items that are relevant to the electoral districts. I'd like it to be quite wide open. Things come from the different electoral area districts that we want to talk about at the EAD, and that may be pertinent to all the districts, that may result in recommendations to the board. And the electoral area districts are so very different. I don't want to restrict it down at all. I was quite happy with not having a terms of reference for the EAD. So I'd like to have it a broader umbrella, because there should be some room to move there for the electoral area directors to bring up things at the EAD that most likely will often go forward to the board with some suggestions or recommendations, or that may just die on the table at the EAD, which is fine. And we can also talk about this with the consultant at the EAD. I'll stop on that one, and I have a couple more for later.
So
Thank you.
you want me to,
Heather?
I'm just wondering if is there a question on that, or
I'm just suggesting that if we're, okay, first of all, my first question is when it says 1.1 and it's called establishment, is that the mandate?
yeah, good question. And we were looking at consistent language between other regional districts and how they're doing it. So the establishment is a very succinct way of establishing what the EAD committee is, and the mandate goes broader on that. So, I mean, the wording, I can come back with more comfortable wording if you'd like, or look at other options at other regional districts. That seems to be the most consistent one.
Okay, well, if it's not actually the mandate, it's just that the mandate is referred to in 2.1, right? Has the authority to provide advice to the board on matters related to its mandate. So the mandate is the entire document then, is that right?
Yeah, in a way, because you have your authority of what you are authorized to do, and then your mandate is when I'm making these decisions, I consider my mandate for this is as it's presented.
Okay.
Does that help? I mean, is it fair to say, is it the establishment that's throwing it off?
I just don't want to be restricted by that 1.1 because it narrows it right down to just pertaining to services paid for. So then we're just talking about how we spend the select funds, which is a lot of what we do. And it generates a lot of our discussion and decisions, but we do a lot of other things as well at the EAD. And so I wanted to have that broader, mine was the Electoral Area Directors Committee is a standing committee established to consider matters related, that are relevant to the electoral area directors, like just a broad statement like that. Like in Area B, I might have some issues, cultural issues, fire issues, requests for support, things that I just want to ask the other electoral area directors about or make suggestions on, without necessarily tagging money to services in select. I'm just trying to leave that what I consider to be the mandate, I'm just trying to leave it a little bit broader to allow for some of those conversations and discussions and not be restricted where I want to put something forward consideration at the EAD, and it may not be directly tied to funding through select or even recommending to the board payment in lieu of taxes. But I still would like to have it discussed at the EAD.
Vivian, it's pertaining to services paid for by one or more of the following. Now, yeah, at our meetings, we're only dealing directly with something like select funds, but services paid for, that's all the wastewater treatment systems, the street lights, those services are paid for by the electoral area. So I see all of that as being part of our sort of area of concern, something we can discuss. And then if you look at which one was it? 2.3, the committee is limited to dealing with matters related directly to the areas defined in section 1.1. Well, that to me is wide open. If anything affects, I'll just speak for Area D at the moment, if anything affects Area D in the slightest, I think I can talk about that at EAD and suggest that we bring something to the board.
Okay.
I think we need to talk all this through, and I think the first step should be at the EAD committee, and that we should bring some recommendations to the board.
Sure, that's fine. Because it may be that I'm the only one that sort of has that opinion, but I'm thinking of something, for example, I'm having a problem this morning with something to do with one of the fire brigades in one of my areas. And I might not be able to provide funding. And so does that mean I can't talk about it at the EAD, right? And we're not funding it through any SLRD services. So does that take it off the table?
I don't think it does, according to this wording, but I think we need to hash all that out and get clarification in our EAD committee.
Sure.
But I see Chris has got his hand up, so I'll just let it go to Chris.
Okay, I'll pipe down.
Ah. Thank you.
Hi, thanks, Tony. Yeah, I'm comfortable with this going to the EAD, for some discussion and so on. I guess for me, there's the question still, like, I think there's a whole question of, from my perspective, the EAD directors seem to be fulfilling both a governance role and what seems very similar to a staff role at the moment. And I think there's some friction because of that and lack of clarity. And so I'm looking for, and maybe this is the vehicle, but sort of an understanding of what roles do we actually, and I think we've talked about before, it's not just about us, but setting clear expectations for the community on what an EAD's job is, and then compensation falls from that. And depending on what decisions we make there, what staff support is actually required for that governance model. And if we are expecting EAD directors to be really doing a lot of on the ground staff like work, how do they have appropriate access to staff because they can't do it all by themselves? Or do we expect them to step just way back in strictly governance? So I think there's that whole really big discussion with several elements. And so if this is sort of helping us to start that, I think that's great. I'm not sure all of that belongs in this document. So just want to flag that as I'm sort of hoping at the end of the day, we've discussed and addressed all these things. And again, if this is the way to start that, great. But I think those are the pieces we need to somehow figure out.
Good.
Would you like me to answer? I
Sorry,
think there's a question there, Director Pettingill. I'm happy to answer, provide clarification. The plan is exactly that. The terms of reference, the conversations are outside of the terms of reference. The terms of reference are in order to begin the conversations and have that. Prior to the EAD meeting, there'll be a survey to go out so that all EADs can share what they're looking for, what their concerns are, what they would like to see change, how they would like to interact, and what kind of governance model they would like to see. And having the consultant there reviewing it in advance and having a broader discussion is part of it. Don't necessarily see that going into the terms of reference, see that being defined quickly in the meeting or making a roadmap to build that structure capacity. What does that capacity look like? And we've had that conversation where there's a lot of great ideas. So what does that look like? And what kind of supports do we need to put in for that to happen? So I think everyone is seeing the path forward that we're proposing, which is this policy should be going in front of the P&D committee as a proposed policy, and it goes to EAD for review and feedback. At that point, that comes back to the Policy and Development Committee. Some of the conversation might actually go to a board level, and we'll decide in the moment when that conversation happens with the EAD committee. It'll almost be a workshop, but it'll be just a robust conversation and review.
It's going to be an interesting conversation, I think. So where do we go from here? I think we just have refer this to EAD and ask for recommendations to come back. Should they come back here, Heather, before they go to the board? I think so.
Thank you. Yes, through the chair. Yes, for the terms of reference. Yes, absolutely. We would have to make a decision in the moment when it comes to what conversations are gleaned out of that, whether it's a policy and development committee meeting or something else. I think most of it would be under policy and development. This is a governance, and this is a governance conversation.
Okay, so. Okay, how about a resolution then that the terms of reference be referred to the next EAD committee with requests that they be reviewed and comments, whatever we want to use, comments, recommendations to be referred back to this committee for further action. Something like that?
Yeah, there's a on the agenda, there's a proposed motion that works for everyone.
Okay.
And maybe Tony, before you get to making that resolution, there's a couple more questions I had that we might want to consider in
Go ahead.
under the committee composition. The committee shall also include an alternate. The alternate director for an electoral area shall serve as a committee member in the absence of the respective electoral area director. And as we've run into problems with this before, somehow we should indicate that they have the full authority of the director if we want to do that. Like, I do recognize that the alternates aren't elected, they're chosen by the electoral area directors. But I think in order to serve their role fully, effectively, usefully, they should have the authority of an electoral area director at those meetings. Maybe actually I should probably ask Angela, because we've only run into this problem with directors' reports, but otherwise for voting, they do have the full authority. So that's another policy that needs to be changed somewhere else, right? So we probably can't change it here because that would conflict with another existing policy. Is that right?
Angela.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you for the question, Director Birch-Jones. As you mentioned, there within the procedures bylaw, there is a clause in relation to directors' reports landing on an agenda. And just in the absence of the director, there is a requirement for that director to provide the authority for the information to be heard at the meeting in the director's absence. But as you mentioned, the alternate has all of the voting capacity that the director has as an alternate when they sit in on those meetings. It's simply a clause around directors' reports that requires that. And there is some reasoning around that that we will delve into when we go through that procedures bylaw which is under review right now.
Okay, so there's no need to change that, and we worked around that perfectly fine. So, okay, that will leave and then the only other thing I had then was meet monthly on meeting dates set annually, except for August. Do we want to take August out of there?
Where are you seeing that? Oh,
It's 6.1.
well, we said, when we set our dates annually, we don't set one for August, so does that not? One year we may decide we want to do that.
Okay. Okay, so the committee shall meet monthly on meeting dates set annually. And if we skip August, that's the way we do it. That's okay? All right.
Okay. So I turn my page.
Chris has his hand up.
This has its hand up. It's hard to see. Chris, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. Just on the recommended staff resolution, I think I'm okay sort of moving this as is, on the understanding that once we get to all the discussion, we may want to update this policy again, or I'd be maybe inclined to just move this without any statement of endorsement and just sort of refer it to the committee. I think either way is fine, but in the back of my mind is this idea. It sounds like there's still a lot of discussion, so I wouldn't want to sort of imply that we're locked down on this particular draft, because to my mind, there's a few things that, still a lot of discussion to be held. I think it's a great starting point, but
So if I look at the suggested resolution, that policy development and review committee supports the EAD committee terms of reference as presented and refer to EAD for comments. I think that captures what we've been talking about. It's not making any decision on the terms of reference. It's just, well, I say just, it is furthering the discussion. You put it in front of the EAD and you'll get some comments back. You've already got some questions Vivian's raised. I'm sure there'll be stuff from Russell and Sal as well. And then when it comes back to this committee, it will come with comments from EAD. And at that point, we can really decide if we want to make any changes, any additions, any subtractions, whatever. Heather.
Thank you through the chair. May I suggest that we alter the motion slightly and say that the Policy Development and Review Committee supports, and Review Committee refers the Electoral Area Directors Committee terms of reference to the EAD for comments. EAD Committee for comments.
Thanks, that's better.
How are you changing? Could you say that again?
Yeah, I'm kind of just taking out the word supports. So that this committee refers the EAD committee terms of reference to the EAD committee for comments.
Okay. Do you have that, Angela? Can someone move that?
I'll move that.
Moved by John, seconded by Vivian. Any further comments or questions? John?
Yeah. Just in supporting the motion, I'll add my thoughts on Vivian's point about establishment 1.1. I agree with her that I think having that reference to money just sets the tone right off the top, being a little more restrictive than maybe we want it to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Yeah, cool. Question. Anyone opposed? Oh, sorry. Vivian, I'm sorry, I cut you off. What?
It's no problem at all. Just one other thing that jumped out at me was that it wasn't clear to me that the chair of the EAD would have a role in setting the agenda, working with staff, which is kind of the way we do it, I think. And somehow, but we can talk about those things at the EAD, and I really appreciate it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So call the question. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Okay. 5.4. Having trouble with this machine today.
Information report.
There we go. Okay. So, Heather,
So that's the information report.
yeah, I've got it now.
Okay.
Yeah. There we go. Okay, so the information report, which is page 11 of 16. Do we have any?
Raylene's here to present.
Oh, there she is.
Hello.
I'm sorry. There's somebody else in the room. Raylene is here and she's going to lead us through this. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Raylene Rehill, Legislative Coordinator. I'm here to provide a brief summary of the project approach related to the overarching Governance Excellence Initiative project. The SLRD Procedure Bylaw 1499-2016 has been identified and endorsed by the board as the first priority of the Governance Excellence Initiative project. The information report we've provided today outlines the suggested project approach and estimated milestones for the bylaw review. The approach is suggested to be phased with two parts. Part 1 are phases related to information gathering and specific bylaw recommendations, and Part 2 are phases towards consideration of bylaw adoption. The suggested phases are outlined in greater detail in the report. So while there are some elements of a procedure bylaw which are legislatively required, an effective bylaw review will also encompass board input and comments regarding areas where changes can occur, with staff analysis thereafter, resulting in specific bylaw recommendations, which will be presented to the committee and to the board for consideration. As outlined in the timeline, the work currently being undertaken for this project is research of the legislative requirements, looking at other regional districts' procedure bylaws, familiarizing ourselves with our member municipality procedure bylaws, and also identifying SLRD documents, including policies, procedures, and other bylaws that could be impacted by any changes. So this is our first touch point with the policy committee to inform you of our project plans. And our next key touch point is planned for winter, where staff will present a procedure bylaw 101 to the committee of the whole. This would be similar to other departmental information presentations that you've seen and act as a precursor to the board survey. Further to our report, staff described the survey as a favored method for collecting valuable input and comments from the board. Thank you. Angela Belsham, Corporate Officer, and myself are available for any questions I have right now.
Thanks very much, Vicky. Questions, anyone? Jen?
Thank you. Can you remind me, I don't know who I passed along. I passed along a list of challenges with the current procedure bylaw. Do you have that, Raylene? I can dig it back out. It's been a couple of years now since we've first started talking about this, so.
Absolutely. Through the chair, staff has been gathering anecdotal feedback, and of course, we do have some specifics as well. So we have been listening and we're making very detailed lists. We'll incorporate those things into the survey that we'll also provide to maybe spark some other questions in some area that others can comment as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Vivian?
This is a good report and it makes sense. Thank you.
Chris?
Yeah, just similar to the last item a little bit, in my mind, this will raise questions about delegation and where there's opportunity or reasons to delegate, which is, I think, in its own bylaw, but still related. And so is this, again, meant to sort of spark some of those discussions that we won't necessarily deal with here, but this is kind of a vehicle to have some of those bigger discussions possibly?
Thank you. Thank you. Through the chair. Yeah, I think through the survey process will be a great opportunity for us to get some feedback from the board to understand where there may be some sticking points with our current procedure bylaw and how we can streamline some of the processes. We've heard loud and clear through the board that there is a desire to prioritize efficiency along with the transparency, collaboration, and accountability within the procedures bylaw. So we're really hoping that through the survey process, we'll be able to glean some more information from the board around what some of the sticking points may be, so we can incorporate that into the procedures bylaw. Also taking into consideration, there are some pieces within a procedure bylaw that are legislated, and we may not have as much flexibility. And that's why we were thinking that our next touch point with the whole board would offer that opportunity so that everybody's aware, like goalposts that can move around a procedures bylaw and ones that aren't as flexible.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Tony, I'll make the motion that do we need the motion? Yeah,
See. Motion to receive the report.
yeah, I'll make the motion to receive.
Seconded by John.
Can I make a comment?
Please, comments. Jen?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this is a process that I think is long overdue. There are many pieces of the procedure bylaw that really limit or make inefficiencies, which is I think they were well intentioned when the original bylaw was written. But as we work with it and as we've seen when there is flexibility required, or as the world changes, sometimes there are changes needed to this. And I understand the purpose of having those processes very fixed to keep consistency and to keep governance transparent. And there are many, many good reasons to have these rules in place. However, when one bylaw refers to another bylaw and locks things in, it makes I think it makes very difficult for the staff to move with, to move things around and to be able to do their work. And so I think this is great that we're reviewing it. Hopefully we can simplify and streamline a lot of the work that we need to do, which will give staff the flexibility to be able to move quickly, because as we all know, there's nothing more frustrating than being held up by something, having to wait till the next meeting, or having, when things could simply be taken care of efficiently. So this is great. I look forward to seeing this work done. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Chris?
Yeah, thanks. Really excited to move this forward. I mean, we're trying to move some really big, important pieces of governance work and changes. And it is calling back to our first discussion or early discussion about scheduling meetings. It does feel like that's getting in the way of some of the work we need to really be moving on. And I sort of, as I think about what's here, I wonder if we sort of, a lot of these things I think will take multiple iterations and possibly more than one discussion. And so maybe we start, if we've got quorum, we just move ahead on the meeting, and, folks can talk offline to the chair, vice chair, and so on. And, if you miss one, catch some of the comments and stuff maybe on the next meeting, just to try to see if we can start getting a bit more traction and momentum on this, just because there is so much important stuff here. And I think there's real opportunity for us to tackle some big things, but we've only got 2 years left. And so hope we can push forward on this. Thank you.
Thank you. This is quite an ambitious timeline. I looked through this, and we want to get this all wrapped up by next summer. So, and it seems with plenty of opportunity for the board to be involved, and I look forward to seeing how this works out. So, can I call the question?
You haven't.
I haven't yet. Yeah, good. I'll call the question. All in favour? Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Any late business at all? Thank you very much, Brady. Late business. We come to number 8. No one wants to go. No one wants to leave. Vivian.
I would like to move that we adjourn, Tony Rain.
Oh, thank you. Seconded by Jen. Oh, anybody opposed to that? No, very good. Okay, well, thank you very much.